I had this panel, and I had parents from around the country, one from Virginia, come down to Charleston, South Carolina, and she says to me, I need basically a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request just to get a copy of my kid's curriculum. I can't get into the school. And then you hear these parents in Iowa in Virginia who are concerned about their kids being indoctrinated from a gender perspective. I decided that the problems are not just in one state, they seem to be in many states. So one of the things that makes common sense to me is the parent is the person who should be in the biggest, most powerful position possible in making decisions for their kids.
So I want to talk about the Protect Kids Act because you are leading on this from a legislative standpoint related to all of the gender nonsense. But before we do that, let's do one other social justice thing. According to my notes here, you are black. Is that correct?
My mother and my father have confirmed the fact. I am black.
Okay. Well, wait a minute, Senator. According to mainstream media, you can't be black and Republican. What's going on here?
I have tried to figure that out. I looked at the polling information, and the polling suggests that there's 82% chance that I'm black, but the chances are 100%. Here's what's happening. And Dave, this is really simple. Anytime an African American who happens to be conservative starts making common sense on TV, the left must nullify the very existence of someone they wished was a unicorn. But I am not. I am real. I am not a fairy tale. I am really here in front of you. The truth is that the most dangerous sight they've ever seen is someone who actually fights for the very people they say they represent and produces results, like opportunity zones. When you think about bringing poverty to the history of America, 2019, think about the fact it is the year that the private sector invested $29 billion through opportunity zones in those marginalized communities, leading to an 8% increase in wages, a 20% increase in property values, which shrinks the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And oh, by the way, it led to the lowest level ever recorded for poverty. That scares the blue dickens out of the left. It's a strange thing, but it works. We have the proof is in the pudding. Black conservatives that stand up for folks living in marginalized communities represent something that MSNBC and sometimes CNN, they just can't stomach it. But here we are.
They can't. You know, I don't know if you know this, but I campaigned alongside Larry Elder during the California recall, and I would open for him at some events, and I'd read the headlines, and they'd say, all his supporters are white supremacists, and he's the black face of white supremacy. And I'm out there in front of thousands of people waving American flags, cheering him on, and they're calling them the white supremacists. Well, man, you got to get your watch fixed.
Here's the funny thing is, here's a guy who ran for Congress in 2010 against the son, Strom Thurmond, in the birthplace of the Civil War, Charleston. And because of the evolution of the Southern heart, I sit now as a United States Senator for the great state of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. If we were talking about racist not supporting candidates of color, I wouldn't be here. Nor would a successful Wesley Hunt, who won his primary in Texas. By the way, primaries are typically, Republican primaries are more white than the overall population. So if you want to test the theory of race and politics, go to places like Texas or Charleston, South Carolina, or John James in Michigan, and you start noticing there's a trend that people actually judge you based on the content of your character, not the color of your skin. Ask Myra Flores or Young Kim or Michelle Steele, and you'll get the same conclusion that Americans are far more interested in what's on the inside than we are the outside. But Democrats, the tribal nature of identity politics requires them to start on the outside and use these characteristics to come to an artificial conclusion consistent with the very theory of progress. We are the land of opportunity. We are the place where hope breathes eternal.
Do you think it's possible that Republicans or conservatives, whatever you want to call right-leaning people, was it bad messaging on that side, or was the messaging of the left just so effective to create these untrue memes that you're describing? Because it's not. I can tell you, as someone that was a lefty my whole life, came across the aisle now, and it's like I meet the most decent, loving, open, actually more open-minded even than the purported open-minded people. I mean, that's the
Dave, one of the things I found to be quite interesting is the definition of any words used in politics today, like the Inflation Reduction Act actually increases inflation, or the fact that you hear people talking about the Republican Party being a group of racists or deplorables, and the truth is when the guy from the Black Lives Matter leader showed up at the Trump rally, they gave him the stage. I mean, and so they applauded him for the things that they agreed upon, and they didn't boo him. They treated him with respect and deference on the areas of disagreement. He was stunned and we say in my office, shooketh, which is a Tim Scott internal phrase for, I can't believe that happened. So literally, what we find happening all across the country is people of good intent, they welcome debate. They actually welcome disagreement. What they don't welcome is indoctrination. What they don't welcome is you telling me that because of the color of my skin, I'm an oppressor. Or you frankly telling me because of the color of my skin, I'm a victim. Both are offensive. But people of good intent, they don't judge you based on these superficial things. They judge you based on how the heart responds to the crisis of the moment.
All right, so speaking of the crisis of the moment, let's talk about your Protect Kids Act. I've done a ton here on the gender stuff, obviously all the woke stuff. First off, how did this even get to your desk? Is there an issue, a real issue with this in South Carolina? Are you just kind of modeling this off what DeSantis is doing down here? Or how did this get to you?
I celebrate all the governors around the country who take very seriously the importance of relationship between a parent and their teachers. And Governor DeSantis has led on this, and we should give him a lot of credit for doing so. What I've seen across the country, I've been focused on school choice and empowering parents for the last 9 years. I love the model that Jeb Bush had and Rick Scott had and now Ron DeSantis has in Florida. But the truth is that governors throughout the country, including Kim Reynolds in Iowa, they're all focusing on school choice. And one of the reasons why is I had this panel. And I had parents from around the country, one from Virginia, come down to Charleston, South Carolina. And she says to me, I need basically a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request just to get a copy of my kids' curriculum. I can't get into the school. And then you hear these parents in Iowa and in Virginia who are concerned about their kids being indoctrinated from a gender perspective. I decided that the problems are not just in one state, they seem to be in many states. So one of the things that makes common sense to me is the parent is the person who should be in the biggest, most powerful position possible in making decisions for their kids. Big labor unions and bureaucrats are in the way of those parents making the decisions and then working with their teachers to carry that out. I want that to be nationwide, not in 1 or 2 states where the governors are taking that issue seriously. Every single state, when you're talking about a 12-year-old, the parents should be engaged in the decisions of their kids. That's just common sense in my house. So where I grew up, I wanted to be common sense all across the country.
When you talk to the Democrats in South Carolina and you bring this up and you talk about transparency and, okay, the power back to the parent, do any of them get it? I mean, again, I guess it sort of gets back to that other question we talked about. But to me, something about the one with kids maybe is a wake up, sort of like what we saw happen in Virginia with Youngkin winning when it didn't look like he was going to win just a couple weeks before the election.
Absolutely. The parents do. I think parents, Democrat parents get this issue as well as Republican parents. This is an issue that actually unites parents across the board. In South Carolina, they were stunned by the developments across the country as it relates to your ability to have a gender identity group and to have teachers feeling like they're forced to provide instruction. That is just antithetical to what's in the best interest of a child. to exclude the parent from any conversation around those very important topics. And so this legislation would pull money away from schools who refuse to comply with what the law, by the way, of the land already is. Minors don't make decisions in a vacuum. It requires a parental supervision to make those decisions. I have to reinforce that by pulling the money away so that we can make them pay attention to what the law of the land already is.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.